So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the creditor community. These are the creditors. So the creditors of countries such as the US, who's becoming the single largest debtor in the world in terms of size of its debt issued out there. Who are the holders? Not only the Fed, but also the central banks, China, Japan, and all of us indirectly. Okay? So again, that's the role of China as well, not only becoming just a major global manufacturer of almost everything, not only because it's the size of its economy, because it's really the creditor of the world. So again, a bilateral strategy in terms of dealing with China in multiple fronts is a necessity. We have heard in this country, and any other country who has had credit issues, the world debt sustainability. Okay, quickly, let's go through, again, through this G10 group and talk about what is the size of the gross of the public sector debt, in the high-income countries within the top 10. And immediately we get situation of, what's the situation of Japan here with 240% of GDP in terms of gross public debt. The beauty of Japan is that most of that held is locally held by the Japanese. But the size of the debt is unsustainable. That's why this country is most likely to suffer a lot of rating downgrades. And even the other 4 members of the high-income economies, the debt to GDP, we're talking around, give or take 100% of GDP. Again, unsustainable situations. Either this country is starting to grow just to improve the debt profile, or the rating agencies going to start just downgrading them. And then within the emerging market or the developing world, the debt situation is literally more manageable. So I was asked today at lunch, where's the opportunity to invest? Well, clearly, if you're looking for quality, the graph's telling you a story. If you're looking for liquidity as well, okay? So you have to be, cognizant of, you may be investing in a lot of highly liquid, poor credit assets. The fiscal position of this group is somewhat similar, but with a bit of differences in 2 countries. First, the high-income countries, of course, have fiscal problems, as you highlight there, the situation of Japan, who has been improving, from 10% of GDP to almost 9%. Okay? So that is improvement in Japan. The UK, US, with levels between 6 and 7. And then, the emerging market economies in which, there has been a negative surprise, and we have been following the situation in India. From a macroeconomic situation, has been the emerging market of relevance who have suffered the most lately. The currency has devalued, the fiscal metrics have deteriorated, the credit rating has been downgraded. So that's a bit of a situation. Another element to put Jamaica in context here, just quickly financial market metrics, and I'm going to go fast here. That's the currency, the Jamaican dollar versus US dollar over the last 8 years, and that's the yield of a bond that I'm hesitant to use the word benchmark, but at least it has been used by many as a bit of a proxy for benchmark, which is the yield improvement, from the shock of 2008, but still, the high levels. 2 things that I want to highlight in this graph. First is you have 2 shocks here, just the post-Lehman as well, and then leading to a situation of debt restructuring in Jamaica, and then the recent events, okay? So I don't want to just project a lot, but I would envision that perhaps in what it's remainder for 2013, we're going to see relatively stable exchange rate conditions, in Jamaica. And then here, the bond yield showing that even though it's still high, around, just 8%, it's been improving from the last, the levels of the last crisis. Another graph that puts Jamaica in context using the regional comparisons. It's the public sector debt and the fiscal situation in the Caribbean and Central America, showing the expected average for public sector fiscal deficit and gross debt. So that's the situation of the last 10 years. Jamaica is at the far left, so here. And then you have Bahamas, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Barbados, El Salvador, Panama, and TNT. And the expectation for the next 2 years, the situation is not rosy, as you can see from a fiscal sustainability perspective. On the gross public sector debt, just the other side of the fiscal coin is the debt situation, the debt GDP ratio. And this is just to, again, how people from outside this country see it without knowing all the details, of the Jamaican situation and the expectation for the next 2 years. Okay, so clearly Jamaica has been in the radar screens in terms of the fiscal situation. Quickly, the next graph will show, it's a bit of an educational photography, who is who in the emerging market world, and there's a benchmark index called Emerging Market Bond Index, put together by US financial institution. And basically the breakdown of that index, this is important because Jamaica will be, issuing debt securities in the marketplace, and you need to know how you are going to be affected, when you're part of that market, right? So the MB breakdown is dominated, in the Americas by Mexico, Venezuela, and Brazil, and Colombia. If you see Jamaica is 0.2% of the index, versus, a good close to 11% of Mexico and Brazil. Mexico, Venezuela, and Brazil together will be, probably around 40%. So whatever happens in those Latin countries will impact the whole market. So it's not only about Jamaica, it's about other countries as well, and in this case, Russia as well. Okay? So I'm going to skip this one and go to the next one, which is trying to put Jamaica in context again. And the yield spread, which measures, for US dollar bonds, the difference between the cost of funding of a given government versus US treasuries. The market has been relatively stable, I would say, over the last 3 years, ranging around, 300 basis points. And then you have the situation of Jamaica, which is that line. And you've seen how literally market participants and what they call financial market metrics have been anticipating the stress, that this country was facing ahead of the news that we have in terms of restructuring and the IMF-supported program. Another country who was in distress was the Dominican Republic, the most affected country, by the global financial stress of 2008, and then the recovery since then. And then you have El Salvador and Costa Rica and Panama, okay? So what that means in terms of numbers is the north, south, or center. I don't know if you can just read there. Basically is that spread put together as of, probably 2 days ago when I left Canada. So by Jamaica, around 660 basis points. So much closer to Venezuelan risk than to Peru and Panama. So there's a lot to do to improve that perception of risk. So that spread indicator, badly called by the media country risk, because really it's not country risk, it's just like literally is the yield spread, is the sovereign credit risk. There's a lot to do just to improve that, okay? So, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go quickly here because I'm pressed with time here. Now, in terms of trends, the Jamaican dollar, and of course, is influenced by what's happening in the U.S. There has been a lot of currency market volatility in the marketplace lately, and some people call it the currency wars. And this graph shows, let's see. Oh. This graph doesn't show anything. Okay. Yeah? Oh. Maybe. It's, yeah. Well, basically what I want to show is that there has been significant changes in global currency markets lately. And one of them has been that central banks are intervening. And particularly, not necessarily it's a policy of many central banks, but yes, it has been the policy of Japan, and Japan has been somewhat distorting, the intervention mechanism. And on one hand, it went to sharp appreciation of the yen versus the US dollar, causing a lot of dislocations in Asia, and now lately reversed, and they're just doing exactly the opposite. And basically, this is what this graph that was being shown, and okay, there it is. Okay, so basically, quickly, no, it's not showing exactly what. Well, it's not showing exactly as it is, but it doesn't matter. That's the degree of volatility. Just to put you on the right-hand side, you have the Japanese yen and the Brazilian real. What I've done here is I took literally the top 12, the currencies of the top 12 economies, and the ones with the highest volatility have been Japan and Brazil. Again, two countries where the central banks are outright intervening. Let's move to the next one. I told you about the Fed focus, dual mandate, inflation, and employment. I call it employment targeting. Of course, the Fed will never like that, but in reality, it is a bit of that. And Mr. Bernanke was very, very vocal, and in every speech he gives and in everything he writes about that they are intervening to ensure that what we're going to see in the graph happens, okay? They're worried about the employment, and what they want to do is to influence the cost of mortgage financing. That is what you see right there is the correlation between the yield of the US Treasury bond, which is the benchmark of cost funding of the world, which is the 10-year US Treasury bond market, US Treasury debt, and then the correlation with the 30-year mortgage rate in the United States. The US had a housing market crisis, housing market shock that affected the banks, that affected the owners of those homes, and affected the financial intermediaries. And what we're seeing right now is a bit of a recovery of that. And this is very encouraging news. The housing market in the US is recovering, and the Fed was a major vehicle of that recovery by allowing, just a very, very low cost of fund for mortgages. The current graph shows how, the housing market metrics. Look at this is what is called a crisis in the United States. That's the collapse of the US housing market. This is the starts, new homes, right? Sales. And we will see that it had nothing to do with 2008. The US had a lot of excesses as well in its housing market, such as the Europeans have a lot of excesses in their own debt. So it's not that Europeans are the bad guys of the movie and the US are the good ones. There were excesses in much part of the developed world. And what we're seeing right now, it's a bit of a recovery. And this is showing the price components over the last few years, improving. And this is activity indicators. The red is what is called the Housing Market Builder Index, which is an indicator proxy for activity. So all taken into account, there are reasons just to be optimistic about that, okay? And that's important. And I have to skip a couple of slides, but there are things that I need to highlight. Interest rate outlook, very important for this country and very important for the world. So, and as I said before, the US plays a major part, in this continent and in the world. This shows, the Fed funds rate, which is literally virtually zero, over the last year, and the futures for these rates, in the contract for December 2013 and 2014, and June 2014. So as you can see, the futures markets are trading, below the rate. So this is indication that the Fed will not do anything, and also supported by what it's called the forward guidance rhetoric of the Fed. So the Fed will not move rates anytime soon. Okay? But not everything is the same in all countries. That's the Bank of England reference rate. Again at 0.5, no change expected. The Bank of Canada at 1%. Bank of Canada has been perhaps the one who probably they were expecting a bit of a 25 basis point rate hike, which is nothing, from 1 to 1.5, and the ECB recently lowering rates. So the situation is inflation is contained, the Fed is intervening, 10-year bond markets are going down, that is improving the housing market. All of that is good news for the US labor market and indirectly to Jamaica. And the global inflation in emerging markets, again, no inflation in the developed world, but yes, rising pressures in the emerging market economies. So that's why we're going to start seeing some of these economies in rate tightening mode. Jamaica, well, I will just leave the graph here. Again, on the left-hand side is the inflation rate in Jamaica. On the right-hand side is Jamaica in context, still, the highest rate. So I think I'm going to skip 2 and finish with 1. If it's going, it's like I'm just getting impatient because I'm just getting, you don't see him, but he is just like pinching me. Okay. You will have this this graph in your presentation. Okay. Okay. That's the commodity price movements. There have been corrections in both gold and copper for those of you who are interested. This is our outlook. This came last night. It's our revised commodity price forecast of Scotiabank globally, and that's for oil, natural gas, copper, and gold. And finally, I want to leave this graph, as my last graph. Emerging markets continue to receive foreign capital flows in through multiple ways. In this case, what it highlights is, that there is both on the debt side, that's bond issuance in which Jamaica will participate, bank lending, multilateral flows, portfolio flows, and foreign direct investment. So emerging markets continue to receive capital flows because of global excess liquidity, because certain economies have done and continue to do the structural reforms. So conclusion, the conditions outside, external conditions, are relatively favorable, but there's no time to waste. We have to take advantage of that. So hopefully, and I think as Wayne, as Bruce Wayne, it's like Batman, Wayne, are you Batman, Okay, so as Bruce Bowen, but not against a bit of dyslexia here, just said, this is a great opportunity. Thanks for listening. I look forward to your questions, and apologize to my colleagues for the time that I've extended myself. Thank you very much.